On this episode, Ashley and I walk into the fantastical, magical world of paganism and witchcraft. We dive into why people practice it and what it's like to be a modern pagan. We go into some of the history of witchcraft, the 8 Sabbats and Holidays that are celebrated every year. We go into books, rituals, rites, some of the gods, goddesses, and even the deities involving the craft. We discuss some of our own personal stories of paganism, even going as far as sharing some of our experiences during rituals. We also discuss meditation and self-growth. So dim the lights, light a candle, and journey with us through the world of witchcraft. And welcome to the show.
We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
It's been a hiatus. For those of you listening in on our podcast, you can also watch the video on YouTube. And one of the reasons why we've been kind of MIA is because we will be soon on the new streaming service, rise.tv. You'll be able to see all our content on there. They have all kinds of fun stuff on there as well. So that's what we've been doing. We've been filming a lot of videos.
Yeah.
We have a ton of episodes. As soon as the videos should be on Rise sometime at the end of this month. Once those drop, there'll be a whole slew of audio episodes as well coming out.
Yeah. And again, that's rise.tv.
Yep,
rise.tv.
website. Yeah.
Definitely recommend visiting it. It's a streaming service, and it is $9.99 a month.
Yeah, they cover all kinds
so not too bad, actually.
No, they cover all kinds of crazy stuff too.
Right, too. It's very interesting. And obviously we wouldn't have done it if we were like, but yeah, definitely check it out for more of our content. Our video content will be on there. So
for those of you listening, and this episode right here is going to be a free episode on YouTube. We also have our episode with Casey on YouTube as well, the one we talked about alternate dimensions and all that stuff too. So we will be periodically throwing some free stuff and clips on YouTube, but for the most part, if you want to watch the videos, they're going to be on Rise, or of course, you'll have to wait, and then the audio will come out on a podcast. So anyway, that's everything that's been going on with us. We have been working our asses off. We have tons of episodes covering all kinds of crazy stuff. We've done stuff on haunted dolls. We
didn't just disappear and forget about you guys, because I know but some people do that. Like they make content and then they just disappear with no explanation, and you just never hear from them again. We didn't do that.
We had Mallory come back on and kind of dive back into her story again, and we went through and actually and since we are doing video now, we actually have videos of stuff that we were talking about, or photos when we would bring something up. There's photos that flash through and all that fun stuff.
And the Mallory episode, the video content episode is.
Yeah. And then
we got into some more stuff.
Yeah. And then there's an episode we interviewed our friend Ben, and he kind of goes into some stuff.
That's probably one of my other
we review
favorite
some
episodes
ghost
that we
story. We go through some ghost footage and all kinds of fun stuff that's been going on. So we do an episode on dream walking. So these are things to expect in the near future. So there is going to be a whole new slew of content coming out. But coming to this episode, we are going to talk about.
We are going to talk about witchcraft. So that will be current day witchcraft, the history of witchcraft, and all aspects, but not just people that practice being Wiccan, people that practice being pagan. So we're just going to cover all kinds of things.
Yeah, we really don't
related
have
to that. We made zero outline, to be honest, for this one, because we knew we didn't need it. We're we're just going to talk.
We're just going to fly through this.
So this, again, is going to be exclusive to our audio and our YouTube channel. So if you do join Rise TV, don't be looking for it there. It won't be there.
Okay. So where do you want to start?
I think that we should start with an explanation of what witchcraft in being pagan or Wiccan is for people who don't know.
Okay.
Not everybody knows what that is, and I think there's definitely people that don't know. I think there's definitely a misconception sometimes.
Right. Well, for me, it's when I explain paganism to people, they're like,
it's
what?
Hard for me to explain it to people that don't know, honestly.
I always use a reference of to use a term for Christianity or something like that, where someone might understand. It's all Methodists are Christians, but not all Christians are Methodist.
Okay, so you know what I did one day to explain a holiday to someone?
What's that?
I had to pull out a Disney example. One of my coworkers, I was trying to tell her because she's like genuinely interested in it because she's very cultured. She's traveled a lot. She knows a lot about different religions and different cultures, and her and I like to talk about things like that together. And she was asking, she knew that we had like a big holiday in October, and she wanted to know, did we still celebrate Halloween or was that offensive? And I was like trying to explain to her, and I was like, and I felt like I wasn't doing it justice. So I finally was like, have you ever seen Coco? Because and have you seen Coco?
I have not seen it.
I was like, like the Mexican holiday, like
Day
Day
of
of Dead, where they like light the candles and like they believe that all their relatives come over from the dead. I said that's the closest example I can give you right now.
Samhain.
Yeah, and I was like, that's why I was trying to explain Samhain to her, and I was like, that's the closest example. And then like it was funny too. I was trying to like, I think the thing people that like always confuses people when you try to like tell them about Samhain, like she was like, I've never heard of that. How is it spelled?
It's like Samhain. Oh,
that's and she's like, how's it? Wait, and I was like, that threw her off too. But
it's Gaelic.
But yeah.
I did some. You know what? I won't take offense to that because I screwed that up for years.
I did too.
I mean, even the band Samhain goes by Samhain.
Actually, fun fact, I screwed it up for years until Jordan corrected me,
and
that was just 2 years ago.
And I had someone correct me on it. They're like, no, you're saying it wrong. I'm like, what? I'm like, the band Samhain. That's what they go by. Even in Ghostbusters, the animated show, they had Samhain. Like, no, it's Samhain. Like,
yeah, that's why I thought too. And I was like, oh, I'm wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we're talking about the history of everything. And I mean,
that's a really good example, though, as far as like people having a misconception, as far as like they don't know what a lot of the holidays are about.
Right. So, I mean, we could do a whole thing on just the holidays.
Right. I could do a podcast episode on each holiday.
Right. On there's books about each holiday. But go ahead and pull up the list of Sabbats.
I sure will.
Thank you. So I guess we can start off with the Wheel of the Year. That's probably the best way to start off.
I think it's the best one too, because I think so. Anybody who wants to research or know more about the holidays, I would say the best way to do that is Google the Wheel of the Year.
Yep.
And it's exactly what it sounds like.
So in most forms of paganism, the year actually begins on Yule.
Yep.
So, which is usually around the 22nd or 23rd. Even like the lighting of the Yule log, which that comes from Yule.
Yes.
It's all about like honoring nature, essentially. That's what it is.
Well, I think that's the best way to I've explained to people too, as far as like the basic underline of pagan in general, witchcraft in general, is it's all about respecting and a worship to nature. There's a lot of things that center around that, because I feel like that's one of the misconceptions is that we're a bunch of weirdos in the basement doing sacrifices. And
we are a bunch of weirdos. But
we are. That part is true, but in some weird basement doing sacrifices or some satanic thing, and we're not.
No. Actually, when we've done rituals in the past, which we have
done them in the basement. We did a couple in my basement.
But it's always funny because like one of us was vegetarian, so there was no meat. Anything that had nothing meat whatsoever. Everything was all cheese and like veggies.
Right. It's a very. I think that's the thing that I think is the funniest. It's very opposite.
Right.
To what like a lot of people think. It's like we're sitting around. No meat, like you said.
It's like we use wood. Like most time, if I use anything with wood, it's like stuff that fell off a tree. I won't even remove it from a tree.
Right. Which I would say that's very like important thing to like point out is there's no like disrespectful things to like nature. Like you're not gonna like.
I think the other big thing we should probably talk about too is like there is no like written law. There's not like you have to do it this way. You have to do this way. It's whatever works for you, whatever it's like. I think that's one of the things I like about it. It's a very like use this as you will, like it's
but yeah, so anyway, as far as the holidays go, it starts with Yule. do you want to do a short like summary of what Yule is?
You have the list in front of you.
Okay, Yule is celebrated generally from 20th to 23rd of December. Is when we light the Yule log.
Yep.
We generally like, that's kind of the place I would say for some people of a Christmas tree.
Yep.
They have a Yule log instead.
Well, even a Christmas tree is kind of a pagan
Right.
tradition.
It kind be, that's what I was gonna say. Even though like the Christmas tree and the Christmas wreath.
Yeah. I mean, even Santa Claus.
I was just gonna say Santa Claus, but there's like, which is also a good example of one thing I've not to go off on a trail here of that I've been explaining to people too is Santa Claus is a perfect example with paganism. There's a lot of balance.
Yeah.
So if something has a good side, there's also a bad side
Krampus.
too. So we've got Santa's the good, Krampus is the opposite.
Which is funny because I think Krampus has like come like, especially the horror movies and stuff like that. Krampus and like I see Krampus stuff everywhere.
Which
now.
I know it's become
it's like,
so mainstream. But I don't think people know.
I never saw it like really growing up or anything, but now it's like everywhere.
Yeah, I don't think that's the hard thing too. I love that, but at the same time I hate it because I think there's some people that don't understand it.
Well, yeah, it's
like
basically it's a guy who kidnaps rotten children and beats them in a sack.
It's very dark.
It is. It's, I mean, it's Scandinavian, so
right. But
Scandinavian folklore.
But yes, I think I will say when I was little, I hated December. I hated Christmas and the holly jolly. It didn't like it. But as I got older and I really got into like being pagan and practicing like witchcraft, or I liked that aspect of
Right.
it.
What happened was during like the pagan era, back in like the early, whatever century, long time ago, when Christianity started taking over, especially like Ireland and Scotland and stuff like that. Well, they took over their religions, but what they did was, okay, well, you guys have these holidays, so we're going to keep your holidays. So these are your festivals and stuff that you guys celebrate. So we're not like sabotaging that.
Right.
We're just going to rebrand them and rename them and have a different meaning of what it is. So it's like Yule became Christmas. Samhain became like a harvest, Thanksgiving almost type thing. But that came later on. But that was like, but they celebrated the harvest at the end of October in the late fall.
So then what after?
After Yule is Imbolc.
Yes.
Okay, and then we're not going to run down every Sabbath because this is going to take forever.
Because we could literally do an episode on every single
one of them. So we're just going to kind of run down them and kind of give them a brief summary. Imbolc, which is kind of like, it's between Yule and Ostera, which would be like Ostera. We'll get into Ostera, but Imbolc is like welcoming the incoming spring, the incoming warmth.
Yes.
It's usually done like January and February in the dead of winter. So it's usually very quiet, peaceful, kind of reflective traditional.
Yes,
like,
it goes
ritual.
from Yule, fun party time, to like more like
chill,
very self-reflective. I think that's the one we've been doing like self-meditation at the beginning.
Yeah, usually just chill. And then after Imbolc is Ostera, which is now called Easter.
Easter.
Which Ostera is about like celebrating.
It's in March.
Yep, spring, like the incoming spring,
fertility.
This is where you get your chocolate bunnies, because like if everyone always wonders why Easter has chocolate bunnies, it's actually comes from bunnies were symbol of fraternity, like So
there's an expression about that.
Yep. Multiplied by bunnies. So that's why you have chocolate bunnies during Easter.
Yes, and then next is probably one of our favorites.
Which one?
This is Beltane.
Beltane, jumping of the fire.
Yes.
This is where you have like the Beltane pole, and this is
it's another super fun one. Like.
This is one where you're for those who would follow like the goddess and god path, this is like where the two of them are getting it on, and like you're getting.
This is the one that where Shannon and I got told we couldn't stand to eat next to each other anymore during the ritual.
So
we couldn't stop making dirty comments.
Yeah, because it's all about sex. But this
we're really immature.
But you also light a fire, and they're supposed to jump over the bonfire. Small fire. You can't jump over a giant bonfire, but a small little fire pit you're supposed to jump over, and it's supposed to bring like luck and stuff like that for the rest of the incoming year. And if you are a couple, do not jump over the fire together, because that means that's like signs for you're trying to aim for a child, unless that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, unless that's what you're trying to. If
And
that's not what
then-
you're trying to do,
After that one is
Lithia.
what is it?
Lithia.
Lithia.
Lithia. So Lithia is celebrating summer as well, but it's the summer solstice. So Beltane is the beginning of summer,
Yeah.
as where Lithia is actually the summer solstice.
Okay.
Kind of like there's Yule, but then there's the winter solstice. They
Right.
aren't the same thing.
Right.
That's the one, and I've seen this before. Not actually seen it, but like historically, like heard of people. It's the one where they make the wheel and they set it on fire and they roll it downhill into a body of water.
Oh, okay.
And it also celebrates the longest day of the year in summer.
Okay.
So, the one after that is Lugnasa, which is August.
Say that again.
Lugnasa.
Okay.
Which is August 1st. And that is the beast celebrates the beginning of harvest season.
Yeah.
So that's when you see a lot of feasting. They used to do matchmaking. That's when you see a lot of stuff that you used to see in like if you play a lot of video games like Skyrim, where you like go to the merchant and haggle and trade stuff.
Yeah.
That's a lot of that happens.
Okay.
Video game nerd example.
Okay.
And after that is Mabon, which is going to be the celebration of the autumn equinox, which is another one of my favorites because I love fall.
So that's like the harvest is winding down.
Yeah.
You're celebrating like the ending of the year type deal.
Yes. And that's another thing with Lugnasa. So you're supposed to, it celebrates the beginning of harvest. So you're supposed to make an offering of your first harvest.
Okay.
And then after that, we're back to what we had previously talked about, which is
Samhain.
Samhain.
Which is the very end of the year.
Which that's the
Yeah.
thing I've explained to people too. So that's like our year end. That's like our kind of
You're-
New Year's quote unquote.
Because you're gearing up for the end of the year.
Which is
You've
it
already-
symbolizes like the end, which is also why it's so intertwined with like the deceased.
Right. So that's the other thing too. Yeah, it's a celebration of the dead.
Yes.
And all kinds of interesting things happen on that holiday. And then going back to Yule, which is the beginning of the year, because you're kind of gearing up everything again. So those are like the basic holiday rituals, Sabbaths, that you do if you're a pagan. So
Right. And I'll say not everybody celebrates every single one of them.
Right.
I will say we celebrate most of them, but there's Lugnasa we've never
the other thing too
celebrated
is
really.
like,
I feel like we should though.
yeah, I mean you don't have to do it in result. We should also talk about the difference
Right.
between like a solitary practice and a group practice.
Right, because that's the thing too with a lot of these holidays, we don't necessarily celebrate them as a group.
right.
As a group.
I mean, I know people who practice solely independent. They don't do any practicing with anybody else. It's just by themselves.
Which, as a group, I would like to expand on that very briefly because I feel like this term is another misconception I hear from people a lot. By group with pagan and witchcraft, and the term is usually coven.
Right.
Which I feel like with horror movies and stuff, there's a lot of misconception as to what that is. We're not having giant orgies and we're not dancing around the forest naked. I mean, we could if we wanted to, but that's just not really what it's about.
Happening in my living room.
Right. It's in your living room, my basement.
We have a card. Sometimes we use a legit card table and just kind of set it up.
Yeah. So your coven's like your family.
Yeah,
it's
just
like
a big group of people. Yeah,
yeah.
and
It's basically like I don't want to say extended family. It is.
Yeah.
It's like your family.
But then there's some that are like
There
very
are
dogmatic.
There
and
are.
very, like
We're
you have
not.
to. Yeah,
And not everybody's like that. And there
I
are
wouldn't
people who
consider
have like priestesses in it and
right.
stuff. We're
I
not.
wouldn't even consider us even involved in coven. We're just a group of friends who get together and do dumb shit.
That's true. Which some people would. Like like people name their covens. We don't even have a name, so I wouldn't even say if we did it wouldn't be very good.
Because we only have this. Because like covens are supposed to it's all like I said, very dogmatic. There's a priest
Right.
and priestess. There's like different.
Right.
There's different
Not
positions.
all of them, but
Not
some
all,
of them
yeah,
do.
but
Some of them too. Like some of them have like you can't just ask to get in it.
No, there's a whole
there's a whole process, and nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what you do, that's just personally with us. That's not what we do.
It's kind of like whatever. We just kind of have fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're not very like.
And we invite whoever. And
right, I was gonna say we're not very exclusive about
we've had. We've had atheist joiners, we've had Christians join.
Right, we've had people come who didn't even want to participate; they just wanted to watch, and we're fine with that. We're like, if you just want to come watch us, you can watch us.
Hang out,
like
if
you're curious to see what it's like, cool. We're totally all about that.
My favorite thing is with a lot of it too is, especially when it comes to like witchcraft and paganism, is like some people have a very very like strong opinion of this is the way it needs to be done. If you do anything, if you variant off this at all, you're doing it wrong or whatever. That I'm like. Whatever. It's like whatever works for you works for you.
Yeah, if that works for you, that's fine. But that's not how it works for me.
Like I use a lot of meditation when I do ritual work, and like a lot of people don't meditate at all. So it's like
yeah, I mean, and different people too. Like different things work for different people.
Right.
Like I know, like we have a really good friend, and she's like super into her crystals. Like that is her thing.
Yeah.
Like. Hey Britt, because I know you listen. She's very into her crystals. She loves her crystals. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm okay with them. They're not like they're not my fave.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I like to do a lot of meditation. That's like my activity to like going into it, even if I'm doing it by myself or like with a group. Like the one time we did like a group meditation, and mine was very intense.
Which one?
Yeah, I've had a lot of intense. I think mine, it was when we did it at your house, and I was first going on to like my Morgan trail and like.
Oh yeah, we should probably get into that a little bit too, like because it's a polyatheist,
right?
Polytheist group, so it's like. You can worship as many deities, or no deities,
which
or
I
whatever
think
you
was
want.
really hard for me. So when I was younger, my father's side of our family is Greek. Like, when I say Greek, I mean grandmother was very Greek. Like the typical cliche Greek jokes are true. Like there's the whole joke, if anybody's ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that like everybody has a Nick in their family. My parents didn't have any boys, so my middle name's Nicole, and everyone in my family called me Nick. They still do. It's a thing. My grandfather's name was Nicholas. I was very because of that, I was very into like Greek mythology, and not in the way where you're like, oh, it's a story. Like I like legitimately like felt there were truths to this, and then I briefly went down another belief system that did not align with that. I will say did not align with that, and kind of downplayed on that. And that was a big struggle for me, and I think that's one of the big reasons. Because when I was in high school, I was very more Wiccan. And it just really hard for me, and I think that's one of the big reasons I left, and I came out and I was like revisited things, and I kind of went back to the Wiccan, but then leaned more towards like the pagan aspect of it.
Yeah, like Wiccan has its own set of rules and rituals and things that are supposed to happen. It has a very not dogmatic, but there is a way of it's done.
Right.
And me, I just like to I just kind of pick and pull from all different sources, and to me that's what paganism is.
I think the paganism too. The big difference between paganism and Wiccan is pagan is way more nature oriented.
Well, Wiccan's pretty.
It is, but I feel like pagan's just a little bit more like in touch with that.
Well, Wiccan is based off Gardner,
right?
So I mean, he was a wild guy,
right, and I think that's like
Gardner. He is the.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't you
the great grandfather of
explain that for no one who doesn't know.
So we had Gerald Garner back in the day. I want to say 30s, maybe 40s. He's from England. He was hanging out with some people who were accordingly kind of involved in the Golden Dawn a little bit, and he went off and hung out with some older lady and was learning some of their rituals and stuff like that, which is theorized that's based a little bit off some of the Messianic rituals and practices and stuff like that. And he kind of picked and pulled from all these different things and had all these crazy experiences. And again, he's like the grandfather of Wicca. That's what he's known as. And he's a really wild guy.
Grandpa
he was
Gardner.
really into skyclad, like huge into skyclad. Loved being naked.
Yeah.
kind of an interesting.
Which who doesn't? Okay.
Kind of weird dude. But so he was the one that kind of like.
And there's like, I will say there is a whole like, there's like Wiccan, and then there's a whole like specific Wiccan belief system surrounded on like him.
Yeah, so
like he
so
has his own.
There's the Guardian Wiccan.
Right, his followers.
Yeah,
so I was just gonna say that those are the people that specifically follow his
version of Wicca, witchcraft.
Right.
But he was the one who actually kind of coined witchcraft as a like practice, because this is back when England still had bans on practicing witchcraft, and he was the one that was like, "No, man, this is all good. This is cool. You know, whatever. We should bring this out in the open."
You're not gonna get burned.
So then, like, he kind of opened the door a little bit for people to be more,
which I love,
equal to that.
I love that.
And he has
somebody did that, because you almost wonder, because like it's still like people are still not sure about it in some aspects, and I think like part of me wonders like how severe that would be had he not done that. Where would we be? Like, would we be even having this conversation on a podcast right now? Probably not.
So he wrote a book.
He wrote lots of books, by the way.
He did write lots of books. His first book was a fictional book. It's a fantasy called High Magic's Aid.
Was it fictional or was it fictional?
It's
quote unquote for those of you just listening to the audio.
It's fictional, but he did put a lot of rituals in the book.
That's what I mean. He slid some stuff in there.
They're doing like it's actually a really poorly written. I actually own the book.
I'm sure that maybe is what he was going for. Like he's probably like, I don't care. I just want to slide this stuff on in here.
It's a hard read, and not like Lord of the Rings hard. It's like,
I like your.
My God, this is like brutal to read through. But in the book, he talks about like they're a hero in a quest, and magic's involved in a fantasy land and all that stuff. But they actually do rituals, and they actually are calling down like the four corners.
Yes.
And they do all that, and so they're.
That's also a good example. Like I'm like, have you seen? Like, I try to give, like, examples that I know everybody's, like, mainstream. Like, oh, you've seen The Craft? They call the Four Corners. We do that.
Yeah.
Anything else in that movie is not necessarily true, but we do that.
Right. They're calling down the four corners because it's like you're surrounding yourself with protection, and you're honoring those. But you have to close them. Very important. Yeah, close.
Fact that I want to throw out there to any before you proceed is if you are doing this or you're interested in doing this, make sure that when you are finished, you close them.
So, Naked Gardner, he wrote a book, High Magic's Aid, which had a lot of rituals and stuff like that. Rumors and speculations as he did pick some stuff up from Masonic a little bit of Golden Dawn. It was just kind of a hodgepodge of all this random stuff and people he collected. And then he got so then he started doing his own stuff, and then he started doing his own practice. So then it goes to from him it goes to Raymond Buckland. And he wrote, Buckland's Book of Witchcraft. So that's also very like it kind of goes off to his kind of follows the Guardian Wicca as well.
I would like to briefly, since you've brought that up, very briefly think it's important to touch base on the term magic.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's a lot of misconception there as well. We're not talking about magic pulling rabbits out of a hat or sawing a woman in half.
Obviously.
It's not I feel like people think I just feel like, I get that sometimes where people think like we mean like abracadabra, gonna make something appear magic.
For me, it's like I think this is such a dorky reference, but it makes a lot of sense. And the original
I'd use them all the time listening.
And the first Thor movie, which is not very good, they talk about magic, and he even says like magic is this science you don't understand. And that's exactly the move.
That's absolutely. I would say it's definitely more of it is more of a science, not magically making things happen.
I had a friend last night send me a video of some really weird shit that happened in his house, and he was like, he wasn't freaked out. It was like something really weird was caught on camera. He wasn't freaked out. He's like, dude, I'm treating this like a science experiment. I'm like.
But that is because that is how I explain kind of it to everybody. I'm like, so if you don't understand it, there is more of a science behind it. So if you know basic science, everything's made up of atoms. When things vibrate together, they give off energy.
Yep.
That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
it's about there's a lot of it that's working and manipulating with energy. But that's just a very basic explanation as far as what I use. Like, and sometimes I'll go further depending on who I'm talking to. Not all people want to hear about that, and I can respect that if you're not into that. But I did want to briefly touch that term for people who aren't quite as familiar with what exactly that means.
Yeah, and then now I forget how many offshoots of paganism and witchcraft there is. There's
a lot.
There's so many.
There's neo-paganism is one of them. I know that. There's
so many, and then there's like variations in those groups. So they don't even know like the exact numbers of how many people actually practice because there's so many different practices and belief systems.
I just don't like if that works for you, like to say I'm part of this.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
Like okay,
I don't
I'm
even
pagan.
I don't even like even like for me it's like I don't like classifying what I do or what I am. I'm just like whatever. I kind of like just kind of pick and choose whatever.
I do, but I think for me saying I'm pagan is more of like it's more of me making
a very blanket.
It's a very blanket statement, but also a blanket statement I'm making it like that I'm very proud of this. Because this is a very big definition of part of my life of who I am.
Because so in some regards, even like Buddhists are considered pagans. Like it's just kind of it's basically a. All right, go ahead and give the definition.
Definition of pagan: a person holding religious beliefs other than those of the main world religions.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could be a lot of things depending on where you're coming from. I will say. There's one of the terms I don't like was when people use to describe a deity outside of like their belief. Oh, it's a pagan god or goddess. And because I feel like whenever I hear that term, it's like being used negatively. Like they're downplaying like, oh, there's not as much legitimacy to that.
Right. I mean, there's Christian pagans too. But yeah, there's also like pagans who work with angels and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's all kinds of.
But then
different...
again, there's also pagans who deal with some really really dark stuff too that shouldn't be messing with. And then they give everyone else a bad name.
Right, there is. I would say it's one thing I do really like though is there's all if you research other cultures and just all the things these people have believed in the past. There's all these different, deities, gods and goddesses that people have worked with. I feel like you shouldn't downplay that. No. Like you shouldn't act like that's not like those things were those people's, those were their lifelines.
Right.
And a lot of what they did, especially in ancient times, revolved around that. And I don't think that should be downplayed. I think that's something that we should be acknowledging and remembering. And I think that's part of one of the very beautiful things about like witchcraft, paganism, being Wiccan, whichever term you want to use. I think that's one of the big things that I find very beautiful about it is like you are still upholding these things that otherwise probably would have been forgotten about.
Yeah, one of the things that always there's not a lot of people. Some people have like this really strong feeling that like you need to have all these things
right
for your altar and all these like, expensive items and all this stuff and always like
majority of the stuff on the one I have down because I have two in my home on my downstairs one, my Isis one, is stuff people have gifted to me, which I think makes it even more special.
Did I have stuff from the dollar store? I buy like most of the stuff I have that I've either made or I got from the thrift store or just found.
Right.
Like,
yeah, some of it is like
there's
that.
There's no reason to like spend a lot of money on this stuff too, because some people who like want to get involved and like, oh, I can't afford all this stuff. Like, dude, you don't need anything. Just go out and
no, you don't. You can literally like, and if you feel like you actually need something tangible and physical, you can literally just go in your backyard. And
just find stuff.
Like to do
a
ritual or practice with. Like,
I've gone outside, just meditated. Nothing. Just go outside and meditate, and then like that to me was enough experience that I needed. It's like
go on a walk.
Yeah, like
like when we were in New York and we were walking in the forest, doing a Bigfoot hunt.
Well, yeah, we kind of skipped on that. We did go Bigfoot hunting,
which is a little tease.
Or
that's gonna be
not hunting, more searching. Bigfoot searching.
Yeah, huntings are bad and all.
Yeah, we actually did go looking for Bigfoot.
It's gonna be a Rise TV thing
that is a episode coming up with a very, very special guest.
That was a lot of fun though. But I will say, walking through that forest, it was very
Yeah.
A very deep nature connecting spiritual experience.
The whole area was pretty weird because we were like.
I didn't want to leave. Honestly, I was like, I just want to stay here.
We were in the tri-state area between Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, up in the mountains. We were
up in the mountains.
And the whole area is just incredible because it's just like. Where we live, there's not a whole lot of nature.
Maybe that's why it's so incredible to us because we're in Ohio and it's very flat here.
Yeah,
and we don't have.
And we live in the city.
Right. We don't get to have that.
I'm excited when I see a hill.
But yes, that whole experience as far as the forest though, was just like I was like, man, I wish we could do a ritual.
Yeah.
In this forest. We did do a ritual, a 10-minute one, but it was very intense. And there was a deer.
Yeah, we had a deer come.
And there was lightning. And there was a fire within 10 minutes.
Deer came. We were outside and the deer
I almost
came.
ran into it.
Yeah, deer came about 10 feet away from us and then sat down and just watched us the entire time. So it was pretty intense.
We were calling the corners to like clarify this. And so Jordan's standing there. Doing that, and then I'm doing the walk around, and it's dark. I've got a flashlight in my hand. Otherwise, because remember, I almost didn't take the flashlight with me, and if I had not taken the flashlight, if I had not taken this flashlight with me, I would have freaking ran into this deer.
There's a deer over here. I'm like, that's not gonna hurt you.
He said it's fine, and I said no. There's a deer.
Like, it's fine.
Right in front of me. It was really close to I almost ran into it even with the flashlight. For explanation, the reason I was nervous because it was a buck.
Yeah.
Which at this time of year their antlers aren't growing out still, but they will. And I was like, but it was laying down. Was the weird thing? It was
it came over and laid down.
Laid down and it just watched us like, hey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Until the fire went out of control and started
burning
the ground on fire.
We had to put out the fire, and then when we put out the fire with the water, it was made that hiss noise, and the deer was like, no.
So anyway, again, so this is the ritual we did. We didn't do anything. We didn't bring anything out with us.
No.
We had
we brought nothing with us.
Yeah, we used a branch that we found as kind of as our guide, and that was about it. So it's like you don't need a whole lot of pizzazz to do these things.
You really don't need any pizzazz. Even when I do stuff by myself, sometimes I'll have a candle. Yeah. Sometimes I'll have some sage. Sometimes I'm just like, I just need to sit here and.
I mean, I've gone to things like at conventions where in a hotel and you can't have anything. You can't have incense. You can't have candles, and it's just they're just everybody in a room together and just doing their thing. So.
I think that goes back to what I said about energies and working with that.
Right.
It's a lot of that. So you don't need anything because you're doing something where that's really the main thing, and it's really about that's I think why meditation is a big aspect for me too. It's helps you tap into what's going on around you, which isn't uncommon in a lot of other practices as far as religion. Meditation's always a big thing, and it's always about tapping into what's going on around you. So I won't sit here and say we're the only belief system that uses that for that reason. There's a lot of other ones out there that do it for the same reason, because they're tapping into what is going on around them.
Right. So some basic
we could go a little deeper into what meditation can be like.
There is so many things out there for meditation.
I will say meditation, it can be you can just sit there just to tap into your surroundings. I will say personally, and I know it's happened to you too, where sometimes you're just like, hey, I'm going to meditate. And your meditation can sometimes be taken over. That's happened to me a couple times before.
I mean, my thing is with meditations is like anything else. It just takes practice.
Mm-hmm,
so just sitting there quietly, and you're
you don't even. The thing is, you don't even have to sit there.
Yeah, you can be wherever.
Some people lay down. That's a big thing.
The whole idea by meditation is just get comfortable. Whatever you do to get comfortable, that's all it really comes down to.
Sometimes I'll sit down. I'm also super into laying on my stomach. That's a big comfort meditation thing for me.
For me, I always have to like sit straight up. Like I always have to like sit and like I can't do anything else. If I lay down, that just kind of throws me off.
If I lay down, I'll fall asleep unless I'm on my stomach. I can't fall asleep on my stomach, so that's why
But I have meditated like super tired, and that's always been a bad idea because I've literally fallen asleep just like sitting up, and I'm like, oh, falling over. Like,
I will say there are types of meditation I've done though that are out there that are intended to like do to make you fall asleep.
Right.
I do love those.
Do you prefer guided meditation or or just doing it?
It depends. I would say it depends on where I am, why I'm doing it. I
know for some people, like especially people who are just getting involved, guided meditations when someone's like guiding you, literally guiding you
I will
through.
say sometimes, like if there's something I'm really like going for, like the outcome of it, guided meditation tends to work better for me because it sets up. It sets it up, and then it kind of just. When I say guided meditation too, I don't mean like fully guided. I don't like that. I like the guided where they start it, and then it's dropped, and then it just goes.
The one time I like guided meditation is when it's done live, like in a group setting. That's the only time I can do it with guided meditation. Otherwise, if I'm like listening, I can't. I can't. I just.
But you can. I feel like you get different things.
Right,
out
you do.
Like,
yeah, but for some people, I know like some people can only use guided meditation, and it's like the whole thing with meditation. It's whatever works for you. That's awesome. Just like everybody else, like whatever, cool. That works for you. That's what you need to do. But just finding that place where you're just quiet and just turning your brain off for 5 minutes is amazing. And if you can't, then just keep every time you think about something, just toss it out and be like, nope. That's the best thing to do for meditation.
Yeah. And with that too, like the fact that I previously mentioned, like meditation sometimes like will be taken over. I've had that happen before where it's like I'm like meditating and I'm just like super into it, and then all of a sudden it's just like, to a degree there's like you choose as far as deity, goddess, whatever word you work for, but there's also circumstances where like somebody comes to you. Yeah. And I've had that happen during meditation, and it's always been very intense. Yeah. And like you were there for the whole experience I've had with like the whole Morgan thing, and that was fun.
I went to I was in a class and I went to like a 2-hour meditation, and I remember like half hour in, I was like, oh my God, this is brutal. So it's like getting uncomfortable, and it's like I was like, holy crap, I don't know how much more I can really get like from a 2-hour meditation. I was just like, oh jeez. And then like I'd go like in and out of it, and then finally I think I got to the point where I just was like, I'm cashed out.
I still think one of my favorite ones that as far as a group one that I went to was the one that you went to me, the Egyptian one.
Oh, yeah, that was
your
really cool.
first experience with
the
that.
Egyptian, yeah.
That
was pretty cool.
I really do like that. It's a different kind of energy, and it's like it goes by very quickly. Like I remember we were in there, and we were like, then it was over, and we were like, we were in there for like a couple.
Well, I guess we could try. We kind of skipped on that too. It's like there's like all these different variations of witchcraft too. There's all these different belief structures and cultures and
different. And I think a good example of different people like have different things they follow. My 2 big ones that like appeal to me and have always been my constant have been anything. I'm very into Egyptian type oriented things, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I have the utmost respect to let me clarify, the ancient Egyptian. I have the utmost respect to the history of Egyptians and the culture itself. I always have since I was a child. And the other one that I'm very into is Celtic. Yeah. And that to me is being somebody who's Scottish and Irish.
I was to say like, my main heritage.
It's a big heritage thing for me. I also, surprisingly, being Greek though, I'm not, as I've gotten older, I've not really done a lot with it.
I more lean towards the Celtic, definitely.
There's just a lot like when you have that in your genetic makeup, there's a lot like that connects you to it. It's a very strong like.
It's funny for me because like I have a lot of Swedish in me, and I have like no connection really to like any of the Norse
That's
stuff.
how my
I have like
I did when I was little with the Greek thing, and as I've gotten older, it's just like I don't connect to it.
I suck with runes. Like I'm terrible.
I'm learning them actually. I'm
terrible with
currently
runes.
learning them. I'm doing my best to learn them, and like it's not the easiest thing to learn.
No, it's different.
But I'm trying to learn them currently. But I think
and like, we're not gonna do a deep dive into this, but like even with like tarot cards, like
I feel like there's another thing that is misconception about that. So I will say when I was younger, if you had told me tarot cards, I wouldn't have known anything about it. I would have had an assumption about it. And I would have said it was a bunch of like phooey nonsense. But then like when I was actually taught them, I was like, and like practice them, did with them with someone, there is a lot of like solid stuff there.
I know people who can like read for other people really well, but they can't read for themselves. I'm better at probably reading for myself than I am for other people, but I'm more just like tarot cards in general. That's why I have a massive collection of like 50 decks. But
I'm getting there.
I just like art. And I am a collector of eclectic weird shit.
Yeah,
so
I don't know if you've noticed that. I
like,
don't have a lot of them because I'm very particular about what I buy. There has to be some sort of uniqueness to them. But yeah, some people think they're evil.
I just collect.
They're not.
No, I just collect them for because I like the artwork and I like the rarity, and I think it's a really weird thing. I just enjoy it. So I have some decks that are really old, but yeah. And then in our studio, we're doing a Ouija board up there too, but
yeah,
Ouija boards.
That's another thing people have different like.
Yeah,
I don't.
Ouija boards to me is not a.
You and I have a little bit different of opinion about that too.
I mean, okay, so Ouija
but
boards,
I have reasons for my opinions.
When I think of like tarot, I mean, to me, it's just all these things are just different types of tools for whatever purposes.
Tarot card,
we have the world up there. But it's like I think for like some of these things are just tools, and I don't necessarily see them as a religious, especially like a Ouija board. I don't really see it as.
I don't, and my thing with Ouija boards, like, I know you just go on forever about it. Just my bottom line thing with it is I'm very empathic, and it's just not something I want to touch.
Yeah. So
I don't want to go down that hole because I don't think it's going to be healthy for me.
Yeah. Well, this one,
and that's me personally. I just don't think it's going to be healthy for me.
The reason why we have the one in the studio is because I bought it because it was from the 50s. And I was like, "Holy shit, this thing is awesome!"
Which is exactly why like when you brought it in here, I said I was totally about it being in here, but I was like, I'm not touching it. I don't think that's a good idea.
It's a Molten Bradley, like William Fuld, 1950s.
It's been around.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna touch it.
Yeah. Made in Salem, Massachusetts. I was like, "There's no way I could pass this up. This thing's awesome."
Right, and I just like it looks really good. I don't.
It's really old and eclectic. So yeah.
But yeah, I mean. That's one of those examples though, like different things work for different people. There's people who like, are very much don't want anything to do with a Ouija board.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be in the same room as it, and that's fine. That's your opinion. Like, and that's the big thing I too love about the whole witchcraft pagan thing is there's a lot of respect for other people. Like even if you're not pagan and you're not Wiccan, there's a lot of respect for if you believe something else. I may disagree with that, but there is a lot of respect to anyone believing something opposite. As long as you're doing it in a healthy manner and you're not hurting anyone, then yes.
Yep.
Yes, you are entitled. You are fully entitled to your belief. The point is as long as you're doing it in a safe manner.
So one last thing we're going to talk about is weird shit that can happen.
Which I think is important to bring up because if this is something like you listen to and you're like, okay, this appeals to me and I would like to explore this, or you're new and you want to explore it more.
Or you're not really sure what all this entails.
Think,
or
like
it's like you're not dealing with like, especially if you stay it's like the lighter, positive stuff. You're not
Mhm.
dealing with like anything negative or angry or dangerous. Some of it can be,
Yeah, some of it
but
absolutely can be.
at the same time, it's like it all comes down to what your intent is. As long as your intent is
That's
pure and respectful, and like
intent is very, very, very big part of it.
yeah,
Huge part.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the whole entire reason why you do a ritual is for the intent of what you're doing. Are you trying to cast something out? Are you trying to bring energy in? Are you trying to
I will
forget something?
say
You trying
one
to-
thing that I will throw out there, too, is if it's new to you and this is something like that a lot of people will hear about and they're like, oh, I think this is really exciting. I want to do this, or like this seems like something that would be fun.
It is fun.
Well, no,
There
the
is
point I'm
some fun
getting
to
to,
it.
there
Yeah,
is,
there is some
but
fun.
if you're new to it or like you want to explore it,
Baby steps.
baby steps. Don't jump right in and be like, I'm gonna invoke somebody.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
You don't want to do that.
Don't do that.
Especially know who you're invoking.
Right. And I would say in that hand, be careful with who you're working with, because even if you work with somebody, baby steps.
Yeah.
Don't go to somebody who you know is going to be really intense, because sometimes you can get invoked without asking for it.
I mean, I would say-
It's happened to me.
I'm saying there's a big difference in like invoking like someone like Aphrodite versus invoking someone like Loki.
Right. Just,
I mean, there's a huge difference in those two.
Right. And don't do any invoking right away.
Yeah, definitely not.
It's
very small baby steps.
Baby steps. Invoking's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And like drawing down the moon and all that crazy stuff. Cone of power. I mean,
I would definitely say
these
don't.
are all things that you probably don't want to jump right into. And these are
blood magic.
Yeah.
Is one too that I would say just don't. If you don't, just don't.
Yeah, I don't. A lot because that again gets you into like the really darker.
Blood magic I've never done. I went to a class on it. To learn more.
Okay.
But with no intention of actually doing it.
What did you take away from it?
I'm not gonna do it. Even more so, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do it.
You're
because okay, so another thing we need to mention here real quick is the fold of
threefold.
The threefold.
Yeah.
Yes, the threefold.
Yeah.
What you do will. That's not just like a that was in a movie.
Yeah,
no, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That was one of the things when they taught the class. They did talk about when you do blood magic, it is going to happen threefold. So if you do something, you expect like. That's why I was like, I'm not doing it, because you're gonna get. There's not really any blood magic that I've ever run across that has good intent to it.
No, it's usually really dark, really heavy. And the deities that are involved are people or things you generally don't want to be involved with.
So I will say that's an example of like.
Yeah,
I will say one of the coolest things that I went to was when we went to the little ritual with the goddesses. It was a goddess ritual, and speaking of it invoking, they had invoked 3 goddesses. And
you guys told me about that.
Super amazing. To experience that. I think that's more of like kind of like the supernatural aspect of it that or some people would define as supernatural, I guess. I wouldn't, but there are people who would. That, that's another thing out there that's very like you just have to be prepared. I think it's very important too. Like, have you had anything happen to you where you like I know you have, where you're just like
I'm just like
this was a lot, even for me.
I've had really, really good experience actually. One time I was I'm not gonna go too much into this story, but one time I was meditating and I was surrounded by a bunch of trees and stuff, and everything was like really pretty, sunrise and all this stuff. And he was like, "Yeah, you did a good job there, kid." And I'm like, "What the hell?" And I turn over, it was my grandfather. And I had a brief,
I don't feel like you've ever told me this.
I had like a 2-minute conversation with my grandfather. That was, I mean, regardless of what what if it was him or if it was my brain in the moment or something
Right, or
like that.
something,
But it
or
was
even
like,
somebody else
yeah, it was
imposing, just trying to let you know, like, this is
it was
inapproachable.
I'm about 99.9% sure it was him because other people in my family have seen him and talked to him, and it was just like, it was an amazing moment. It was incredible. And that to me was one of those moments where I was like, okay, what I'm doing is working. It's, I'm not doing anything bad. I'm not doing anything
Right.
evil. I'm not, whenever I do anything, it's usually I'm trying to do things that better myself, as like trying to get rid of
Same.
bad things about me.
Either myself
or
or like someone in my life, or
I usually will do rituals like
my
involving
environment.
something. Yeah, it's like
my
normally,
cat was sick and I
yeah.
did an offering on my Isis ritual because that's who she's named after, and like they thought they were pretty sure that she had cancer, and she didn't all of a sudden.
So that was a really good experience. I've had some really intense, I wouldn't say really negative.
I've never had anything negative. I've had like really intense stuff.
One time I had
just
something was going, I don't remember what it was. I was meditating and I was like, something weird was happening and my heart started racing and something bad was going on. I don't know what the hell was going on. And all of a sudden I just woke up because my cat jumped in my lap and scared the shit out of me.
Oh, that would still be scary because you'd be like, what?
Well, she that was weird because like my cats usually when I meditate.
Oh, so you think your cat was just like,
she picked up on something because
it was like,
because she always leaves me alone every time I'm like doing something like that. And like this one time she came up, so that was kind of weird. I wouldn't say anything bad.
Yeah, I've never had anything bad either.
Say intense.
I will tell you something like, so about once or every month or two, I will wait till no one's home. Like I'll take an opportunity when no one's home and I will go through the house and I'll just cleanse the house as like anything that's come in to just release it and just banish any negativity. And whenever I do it, I always call upon the aid of like the deities I work with.
Right.
So it's always Morgan and Isis. Last time I did it, I don't think I ever got to tell you this. Last time I did it, my cat, Isis, followed me around the house the entire time. And she doesn't because she doesn't like the smoke.
Yeah.
But it was really weird because I'm like, the Isis and the Isis and the goddess and the cat. And I think one of my favorite, that was just a cute little story, I thought, though. The Morgan ritual we had, though.
Yeah,
that was a lot.
Like I said, I've never really had
in
bad
general
experiences. Mine have always been more either goes like one way or the other, like nothing. I don't experience anything from it, or it's like really intense, or like positive. Like it's like no, I wouldn't say anything negative or bad. I mean, I've heard stories of shit going sour real quick. There was a story someone was telling. I was at a convention. A guy was telling the story about how he has I think his group has a sword or like a really big athame, which is basically a fancy word for a knife. And
a big knife.
Yeah, big knife.
It's a big knife.
Or it's not even has to be big. It's just
you're right.
It's just a ritual knife. You don't use it for actually cutting.
That's
it's
true.
A
it doesn't necessarily have
knife.
to even be sharp.
And you can use a butter
I've
knife.
seen I've seen ones that are just made for the rituals. And they're dull.
I've seen people use a butter knife because they couldn't have anything else around them. But he said he has a knife and he had custom made and everything like that. And during their ritual, he's only ever seen it used as a weapon once, and someone in the group grabbed it and was screaming at the corner of the room, aiming it at whatever was there.
That's a lot.
Then they canceled they shut everything
down.
Right.
That's what you would do in that scenario.
They closed everything.
You close
but he said
that
was the only time he's ever seen a ritual knife being used as a weapon because this guy grabbed.
Though of why it's important to close things because if you leave them open, things like that can come in.
Well, I always use for like creating a circle. It's like you are. It's like you have a house. You turn on all the lights in the house. I use the same thing for like the Ouija board because you're supposed to have a circle, and this is why you open close a circle, because you have your house. You close off every door, every window. You turn on all the lights so you can see everything. You know everything's locked up, and you leave one door open, and you have control of who can kind of come in and who can come and go in that one door. If you don't do a circle, it's like You're just turning off all the lights. You open up every
Right.
door, every window, and just leave it all open. Hey, come on in.
That's why I
So-
think the best like example I give to that to like to visual people, to give people a visualization of like what it's like is I'm like, like you see a lot, and like we don't necessarily draw it out, but you see a lot in like movies and shows
Right.
where people will draw like the chalk circle, and I'm like, that's a very good visual of it though.
Right.
That is something
some
we're
people-
not necessarily. Some people
Yeah.
do that.
Some people do draw.
Some people draw it out, but
some people have one permanently painted.
right. But that's a thing. That
Right.
is a thing. Because everything's done within that. That's actually what I was doing when I almost ran into the deer. Is I was making the circle.
Yeah, I
and-
know. So I mean,
the deer obstructed the
I wouldn't say
circle.
anything bad happened during rituals. I just had intense things happen.
The Morgan, I think, was one of my most
Yeah.
intense ones because, like, we were doing. I don't even remember like what part of the ritual we were at when I was just like.
I did one.
There was just one point. I
yeah.
don't even remember what happened because it was like after that everything kind of just blurred together for me. But it was just like very much like we were doing something, and I just like all of a sudden just like this overwhelming like feeling of just like pure satisfaction. I like was like smiling like satisfactory smile uncontrollably, and I was like, okay, that's not me.
Yep.
That's not me, and
Yeah, so weird.
it was very interesting to
Yeah.
have that like. That's what I mean, like by being careful, like who you work with, because
Right.
invoking isn't always going to happen because you ask it to. Sometimes it's going to happen because
Those
you're
are stories
because
of-
you're doing a ritual for that person.
Yeah.
They're going to come, and that's like, I can't imagine being in that experience when I had been like new to it.
Yeah.
I would have freaked out.
Oh yeah, totally.
But
No.
I knew at that point what was going on and like what to do, and it was fine.
Yeah. So I think that's where like the dangerous kind of side comes from.
Right.
Is like doing
But
stuff and you don't know what's
Imagine
going
if
on.
that was like
Yeah.
somebody that like
was new or didn't know.
knew, or like we were working with somebody that maybe like, because she's intense anyway,
Yeah.
but like maybe was intense and not like.
Well, there's another story I heard where group was doing a ritual and they're invoking Pan. So
That's
they're and this guy works with Pan a lot. So they're invoking Pan, and it didn't go to him. It went to the atheist photographer who was there just to take photos.
Oh no!
I guess the guy like
Oh no!
stripped naked and was like running around like doing all this crazy
Oh
shit.
no!
So
Oh no!
yeah.
That poor guy.
Man,
So moral of the story is,
just know who you're what you're
yeah,
doing.
if somebody's in the room and they're not participating,
Yeah.
maybe let them know.
Yeah.
This is what we're gonna do. So
that's why
maybe
like
do some protection
that's why
for them.
that's why a lot of people work with like someone like Bree, who's very like protecting, loving, happy. Like I feel like she's one of the easier ones to work with. But I mean, she can also, she can be the stern mother every once in a while too.
I think Hecate is another good one that
Oh man, Hecate can.
well, let me clarify that a lot of people work with because like
She's the symbol to crone.
right,
Like the mother, the maiden, the mother,
Mother,
the crone.
mother.
Yeah, she's a triple
but
goddess.
in hand with that there's a lot of like
Hecate
I
is
think the best way to word it. You're not always gonna get what you want.
No, she's your old grandma who doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what I'm saying. You're not always gonna get what you want.
Yeah.
You're gonna get
Who has a 3-headed dog.
you're gonna get what you need, and you might not like the way you get it, but the outcome's gonna be cool.
And then sometimes,
But the path there might be a little rough.
or sometimes you might be working with something and then somebody's gonna pop up and you won't even know who it is. It's something so obscure. You're like, I don't even know who's what. Or I've had that happen. I've had a couple things come up and I'm like,
But I know a
don't
lot of
even-
people that like to work with her for that reason, because they're like, she's very like your grandma,
Right,
but
but she also has. I mean,
right, you're getting like both things.
I mean-
I wouldn't recommend that for a beginner though.
hell no.
No. She was one of the ones in that
Yeah.
thing we went to, and she was, so it was like you had to go through the line, and there were 3. There was Isis,
Which would do maiden.
which was The first,
Yeah,
and
that'd be
I cried.
That'd be your maiden.
I cried. That was my first one, and I cried.
And then Morgan would be the mother.
Because we had a very intimate conversation.
Yeah.
And then Morgan was the second one. That was my first experience with her. And she was like immediately like calling out at me, like,
Yeah.
And then Hecate was the last one, and I was like, why would you put her last? Like, I know, like, that's the order of things. No, I'm saying I know that's the order of things, but like at the same time, like, I feel like everybody was just like, okay, this is gonna go really well or really bad for me.
That's like me.
I was
the ghost of Christmas future.
I was really nervous, but it actually ended up really well.
Yeah. So
really, really well. So I mean, but you never know. Like there was another girl in front of me that left walking away from her in tears, and I don't know the conversation. That was the thing. So you can't hear the conversations they're having. So I don't know what kind of conversation it was, but she was like uncontrollably bawling.
So they what happens is you invoke the god, the deity you want to work with. For those who are kind of like, what the hell are we talking about? And during a ritual, you will invoke. Sometimes you do it before the ritual, and you invoke the ritual.
That's what they did. Yeah. They did it before it started.
Yeah, and then the person will pretty much be in a trance, and then they'll be invoking this deity, and then that person just is gone.
Know. That's okay. That's for clarification. We did the Morgan thing. Like, why part of that is a blur for me, because I don't.
And the people who
I don't remember what we were talking about when it happened. I don't remember.
There's a lot of rituals I was a part of, and there's one I was a part of, and they even told me, they're like, you're not gonna remember much of anything after, and it was in there for an hour and a half.
Right.
And I have like,
that's how this one. So they had a 1, 2, 3. There was a person for each, and then it was so like they prepared it so well that it was like there was a backup for each person in case that person became like, because you can get overwhelmed with it, and like
then afterwards
it's exhausting. So the backup was supposed to take over if it needed to be.
And then the other thing too is like after you come out of that, it's like you're drained and you have no memory of what. I mean, you went into that trance, and you're just.
Yeah, because we saw the Morgan lady later, and like another day, and it was like, who are you?
Their voice changes.
Her
like
voice changes.
Their mannerism, like eyes can change.
Her eyes changed.
Yeah.
Her eyes changed.
Some weird stuff happens.
Her voice changed. Yes, her voice changed. Like her posture even was like, and I was like, it's even her attitude, the way she talked was just different when we met her. We're just like, who are you? Like.
So these are some interesting things that happened with you. Not trying to. I don't want to
deter anybody.
I don't want to deter anybody either, and I don't want to.
But if somebody wants to, I want them to come in a healthy.
Right, and it's like, why would you? It's like more focused on like what makes you interested in this, like what leads you to this path in the first place, or maybe you don't know anything about this path, and you're listening to this episode like, what the hell are these people talking about?
Right. So, but either way, like if you have questions about it or
want
to know more, like we will help you. We will help you.
Yep. You can send us an email at info@thespookydoor.com.
We can give you some sources. We can give you some good short rituals to start with.
And if you are on YouTube land, you can leave a comment right below if you have any questions or comments or anything like that as well.
And I would say also, don't forget, rise.tv.
See all our videos and stuff like that. So
yes, and there is so much more to come. And also we have merch.
Yes, we do. You go to our website, thespookydoor.com, hit our merch section, and we have merch. I am currently wearing our Spooky Door shirt.
Spooky Door. We have shirts, we have hoodies, we have sweatshirts, we have stickers, we have coffee mugs.
Yep. All kinds of fun stuff.
We do. Yep. We do. I'm gonna get a couple things myself. I'm having trouble deciding which of the shirts / hoodies or sweatshirts I want.
Eventually, I want to get a hat. I'm a self merch whore. So
you're just like a walking advertisement. Now your father is as well because you gave him.
Yeah, I know. So that's our episode on witchcraft and magic.
Thank you for joining us, and we are glad to be back.
Yep, and we have a whole bunch of stuff coming out
so much
soon.
more exciting stuff and. Thanks for listening as always.
Or watching.
Yes, or watching now.
All right, so journey with us next time through the Spooky Door.